So, have you seen the movie The Kingsman?
Yes, I have.
Did you like it?
Yes, I did.
I did too. It's quite an enjoyable movie.
Mm.
One of my favorite lines from The Kingsman is when he locks the door and says, "Manners maketh man." It
Yeah.
actually, I went and looked up the line to see the origin of it. So yeah, that's great. That was a great line, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that got me thinking that manners maketh man. It's an understandable idea that how we behave towards each other is what defines who we are in society, but that changes all the time. So perhaps tonight we can talk about manners.
I think the first properly good mannered thing we could do would be to acknowledge the audience.
Yes, I
So
think you
if they're
might be right.
here, we should at least or assuming they're here, we should at least acknowledge their presence. Hello, everyone. It's unclear
Or
thinking
one.
time.
Or one. Hello,
everyone.
everyone, or one. Yes.
I am Larry Smoke. I am one of your esteemed co-hosts. That fellow over there is John Bates. Say hello, John.
Hello.
And we are here to talk about things in depth and serious and thoughtful and muddy and murky and see what crud we can find at the bottom of it all.
Yeah, probably not. But we're going to talk. That part's true.
Yeah, that tripped me out when Colin Firth said that line in the movie because you've known me long enough. You know I'm a big Sting fan, and Englishman in New York is one of my favorite Sting works, and that line is in the song.
Yeah.
Manners maketh man, as someone said.
Yep. I looked it up. It goes back a ways. But the thing is, when we talk about manners, manners change. Manners today are different than manners were when we were teenagers.
Oh,
And
boy,
manners
aren't
when we
they.
were teenagers are different than when our parents were teenagers.
Mhm.
And so tonight, I guess we will talk about manners a bit.
Some would say they're almost non-existent now.
Yep. But I'm almost sure that our parents would have said the same thing during the time when we were teenagers.
I think the main difference, though, is we're probably right. I'm pretty sure they're non-existent now. There were still a few of them around in our folks' time, but I think this pretty much shot now.
All right. Well, I've got a theory to bring up, and we can see how it applies to our thoughts on this.
Okay.
There have been some thoughts and theories kicking around that suggest that the most well-mannered, polite societies are those societies where violence is always an extremely likely possibility. Where you have dueling cultures, you have manners. Where you have extremely stratified societies, you have manners. Ancient Japan, where guys were walking around with swords, and if they felt insulted, would cut your head off. They were very polite
I guess
to each
that
other, and
stands to reason.
they had very, very strict rules as to what's constituted politeness, so there was no misinterpretation about it.
You've just
If
made a wonderful case for open carry laws.
And the American South is the same thing. In the American South, in the antebellum South, if you insulted a gentleman's honor, he was perfectly legitimate in calling you outside to attempt to shoot you in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that you're going to be they're going to be extremely stringent rules in society that dictates what's polite and what's insulting, what's to be done, what's not to be done. If you violate what's not to be done, you get shot in the chest, and if you don't, then he doesn't have a reason to shoot you in the chest.
It was a bit harder to be an anonymous troll in the antebellum South, I would imagine.
Yeah. And of course, the anonymity of society has contributed to that. But I would also suggest that modern America is a less stratified society than it once was. Society is fluid. You can start off extremely poor, and you can end up wealthy. You can go to very, very fine schools even if you started off badly, and you can end up very, very poor even if you started off very well. You can be a junkie on the street somewhere if your parents are millionaires or were very well educated, or whatever the case may be. So in a fluid society like that, I'd say manners are fluid as well. And also, Americans, I think, are less prone to erupt into immediate violence than they have been in the past. There's, jail time.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that's probably the litigiousness of our society, wouldn't you think?
Yes. Right. Punch somebody in the face, you might go to jail, but you might also get sued. and you might lose your car, you might lose your house, you might lose all this stuff. We do our fighting in the courts, and that's a very different place than doing our fighting on the streets. And so
And at the risk of sounding like the uncivilized barbarian, but I'll play the part of that for the sake of this conversation. Surely you've heard it theorized that that's probably a good and bad thing, that we society so reluctant to resort to violence and disagreement. Once upon a time, and I won't even say kids. It could even be young men to mature men in their mid to late 30s had a severe disagreement. They could go out in the field somewhere and have a fist fight. One beat the tar out of the other. When it's over, the victor pulls the other one up off the dirt. Okay, that's over. Let's go get a beer. And it was settled.
Yeah,
I know that's an oversimplification, but I do believe the theory is sound, that because we have civilized ourselves as a society past confrontation, that we can't have a confrontation and reach a conclusion, a settlement of a dispute, and that be the end of it.
Yeah. I'm of the same age bracket as you, and I would tend to agree with that sort of thing, but it may just be because we're old.
Yeah, and once upon a time we had a disagreement and you beat my ass, and that was the end of it.
And then we became best friends.
Yeah.
The society, I have a tendency to think that we have drifted so far into, we're going to let the government, society, whatever you want to call it, take care of us all the time, so that we've sort of lost our independence in taking care of ourselves. We don't stand up for ourselves as much because we're afraid of the law, we're afraid of getting sued, or we're figuring, hey, I can say what I want because if that other dude punches me, he's going to jail and I'm going to sue him.
And I'll own him. Yep.
And I'll own him. That's right.
Yeah.
This theory doesn't necessarily explain Canada, but it could be the fact that, Canadians live, well, I'm overgeneralizing a little bit, but, Canadians might live a little bit rougher.
Well, it's colder up there. Their blood doesn't get up as quickly.
Yeah, and they do love hockey, and they love fights in hockey, and they love stuff like that. So maybe a Canadian will punch you.
It just takes longer to get him to that point.
Yeah. I don't think I like what you said, eh? Punch? I don't know. So if we have any Canadian fans, we no longer do. So I when I was looking this up, I did some research, and this is basic social rules for gentlemen from the 1890s. Wear gloves on the street, in church, and other formal occasions, except when eating or drinking. White or cream-colored gloves for evening, gray or other darker colors for day wear. We don't really wear gloves anymore, but don't wear long pants very much anymore either. We tend to wear shorts all the time.
And John Kennedy, trendsetter that he was, he once said that only little boys and men on boats should wear shorts. Which I thought was incredibly profound.
Yes.
Although I wear cargo shorts all the time.
I do too. And he's also the one who made sure that men in America don't wear hats anymore. Because he didn't wear them, and the entire generation of American men stopped.
Yep. Eisenhower and all before him were hat-wearing men, but he campaigned bareheaded. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Stand up when a lady enters the room, or your presence in a large room. Stand up when a lady stands. Offer a lady your seat if no others are available.
Well, we should be still doing that now. I mean, we are still taught that now.
Yes, we are.
It's rarely practiced, but yeah, we are still taught that.
Never refer to another person by their first name in public. That would mean that I would call you Mr. Smoke.
That's true.
And you would call me Mr. Bates.
That's true.
In public. We might, if we're in the drawing room having brandies, we might, refer to each other by our...
Well, in that day and age, anything in public was considered a formal occasion. Informal meant private. There was no such thing as a public informal occasion.
Never leave a lady you know unattended except with permission. Never use tobacco in any form when ladies are present. Not an issue for you or I, but... never greet a lady in public unless she acknowledges you first. I have some for the 1950s as well. Talking about money. A true lady or gentleman a man would never have borrowed money from a lady. Never have borrowed money from a man without security and the intention to pay it back as quickly as possible. Don't necessarily disagree with that one. Never discussed money. Let's see. People walking on the street would dress discreetly, talk discreetly, and never do anything which would draw attention to themselves. It was frowned upon to mention names of friends as it is indiscreet. Oh, and this one, I actually do this because I read this a long time ago, and I have to explain this to every woman I walk with. A gentleman always walked on the road side of the sidewalk to protect a lady or ladies from passing traffic.
Yep, I've heard that before.
Yeah, and if there is no sidewalk, you're supposed to walk on the building side. And that dates from a time when people would throw the contents of chamber pots out the window.
Well, that's another one. That's another one. I've every girl I've ever dated and or married, sadly, because that's plural. I've had to explain when we go into a restaurant, and it seems that women tend to assume that the man wants to sit with his back to the wall. And I understand that because that could be the man wants to be on the lookout for threats to better protect her. But I was taught or told, and I can't for the life of me remember who told me this, but when I was a youngster, I was told that a man always sits with his back to the room so the lady can face the room, so she can see and be seen.
And also the man acts as a barrier.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, he's between anything and the lady. Yeah, like I said, the rules are fluid. They change. From generation to generation, they change.
And now we've devolved to a point where we've got the article that I forwarded to you last week about this incident up in Portland, Maine. Did you read it? Or it was a video clip of a local news story. Did you get a chance to see it?
Yeah, I saw it.
Just to summarize, folks, there was a couple. There was a locally owned diner in Portland, Maine, and a couple with a small little girl, toddler. I think they said the child was less than 2 years old. Were from out of town, and they stopped for breakfast, brunch, and stayed for a good while. The child was crying vociferously, loudly, constantly, and the owner of the diner made several entreaties to the couple to quiet the child, take the child outside, placate the child somehow. According to the owner, the couple had ordered this massive plate of pancakes for the small child, but then did not cut up the pancakes and feed them to her, and the child was pitching a fit because she wasn't being fed. The parents dispute this, but nonetheless, eventually the owner of the restaurant screamed at the child, and I'm paraphrasing, "Shut up, that's enough of this." The child shut up. And the parents were mortified and paid their bill to their credit and left and said they'd never come back. And when we were arranging the topic for this show, you'd said about manners, and that's what caught my attention about this. Here's a situation in modern society to where there are multiple failings of manners on both parties' part, and to me, it all boils down to that. It seems like we all, our population, we all have forgotten the tenet of, do unto others as you have to do unto you. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. If we stop anything we do say for a split second, we think, how is what I'm about to do or say going to affect somebody else? How much more peaceful the world would be.
I agree with that. Despite all of the things I've said about manners being fluid and times are changing and we are less likely to punch each other in the nose, I agree that society overall, in my brief and limited experience, seems to be much more self-absorbed than it used to be. And the attitude of, you can't tell me what to do because then you're imposing your standards on me, is completely contrary to the notion of society, because a society is made up of a group of people who have decided on a standard of behavior, a common standard. That's what a civilization is. That's what society is. Everybody agrees on the same rules. But these days, people don't want anyone to tell them what their rules should be. And if you tell them what their rules should be, then you are a closed-minded idiot and completely out of touch with the times. And And thus you get people who are like, no, my child can scream in public because I'm okay with that. And if I'm okay with that, you have to be okay with that.
Because you can't tell me how to
Because,
parent.
right. Because to be open-minded means that you have to agree with what I say.
Right. And you beat me to the punch with the Portland, Maine situation. I was going to say, what, and as we've established in previous episodes, neither one of us has ever polluted the gene pool. The gene pool is safe from us. So anybody listening can take our opinions with a grain of salt. However, we are adults. We were children. You have a sibling with children. I live in a neighborhood full of children. My wife is a school teacher. We have exposure to children at some degree. And the parents in this diner situation, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter what the owner of that diner said. If a child was screaming for 60 minutes, something was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frankly, they're lucky that our good friend Kevin wasn't there, because he'd have likely gone out to his vehicle and gotten a gun and come back and shot them all. Given his history of every time he's ever gone out to eat in public, there's been a child dining, so that now he only eats in bars that children can't come into. Yeah.
That's a thought. I might need to try that myself. No, but my mother told me, and as we've also established before, there was a time in my life where I was a step parent. So I have been in a parental situation before, and my mother told me to always keep in mind, children cry, sure. If a child cries, there's a reason.
Yep.
And again, if these folks let this baby go on for that long, somebody needed to say something to at least the parents, maybe not the child, but if after 60 minutes of telling the parents didn't do anything, I guess we got to try something.
Even apart from parents, single people have the same issue. We are self-involved. We tend to see things purely from our point of view, and we're justified in everything we do. And if anyone says anything, then to hell with them, because they're not the boss of me. They don't understand. And there's no commonality. Well, that's an oversimplification. There is commonality in society. We do have rules. It just seems like there is less so. The rules of behavior
the rules keep getting watered down.
Yes.
And what do you...
If everybody has their own individual set of rules, it's not a set of rules. You know what I mean? If everybody's playing a game, and we get to make up our own rules as we go along, then you're not playing a game anymore.
And it seems to me that we're slowly sliding to a point to where there are no rules. As each generation passes, as the rules become less and less convenient to our own lifestyles, we change them or do away with them. And if that trend continues, there will be a generation to where the last rule will go away. There will be no rules.
Yeah, maybe this is an American thing. I mean, I don't know that this holds true in China or in Japan or in the Middle East or in Africa. I suspect in Africa there are plenty of rules, and you behave in society in a certain way, and if you don't, then somebody's going to hit you with something. And in China and Japan, both very stratified society, there are plenty of rules of behavior. But it makes me wonder sometimes if in Rome, as she was getting to the point of, close to collapsing, if people were like, no, you can't tell me what to do. Our parents were outdated. I'm going to do whatever I choose to do, and I'm going to wear my toga this way, and whatever the case may be. And maybe it's an ebb and fall of society. Who knows? Maybe we're just on a low point. Maybe we're just grumpy old bastards. So, what's your top guideline for manners in society?
In my own life, at the risk of repeating myself, I try to remember that sentence I said a while ago. If I'm in a situation where I wonder what would be acceptable, the first thing I try to think is, okay, how is what I'm about to say or do going to affect the people around me? As you know, I've recently moved into a new house. I've been in this house 3 months. Not the only, but one of the top 5 reasons I moved away from my previous house of almost 18 years was I had gotten a new neighbor there. And I'm probably pretty safe. I don't think he listens to the show, so I'm probably safe in telling the story.
Okay.
He young kid, freshly married. He was, 22 years old maybe. His first house, he had a stock car. He had a boat. He had a motorcycle. And he liked to work on them and rev them and run them. And his friends had big farm trucks, and they came over at all hours of the night, and they took off all the hours of the day and revved engines and hauled luggage and the racket that guy made. And if he had had the maturity to think, yes, I have the right to have the possessions I want and to live the way I want, how is my doing that affecting the people around me? And he didn't do that. And there was even one time I was doing this show, and I got up and walked out, and I said, dude, I'm doing an internet radio show in here. Can you can the revving for about an hour? And he looked at me funny, but he did it. But the next day it was back at it, and that was, so it wasn't the motivating factor in moving, but it was a factor.
Right. I agree. I think if people would stop and take a moment and say, how is this going to affect other people around me? I have a tendency when I'm going around in the grocery store parking lots, if I see random buggies scattered around, I'll walk them back to the little corral for the buggies.
I do that too.
Thinking, if everybody actually just put up their buggy, the world would be simpler and easier on everyone.
Yeah.
But if you just abandon your buggy because you no longer need it, somebody's going to have to pick it up.
I'm in a hurry, and Kroger pays people to do this, so I can leave it here and I can be about my business, and I'm not inconvenienced. And
right.
But then Grandma Myrtle pulls up in that spot next, and that buggy's in her way, and she's got to get her 86-year-old arthritic hip out of the car and move it so she can park there, and you've now inconvenienced her. So
yeah, I agree. Yeah, things have changed. Things will continue to change, but the underlying rule, I think both of us would say, is that you have to be aware of how your behavior affects other people. That's what it means to live in a society, because your behavior does affect other people. If you don't want your behavior to affect other people and you want to be free to do what you want, go live in a cabin in the wilderness. You can run naked and play with ducks all day or whatever it is you choose to do.
Do you think there's any hope for society? Forget remembering manners, just clinging on to the few we have left in the age of social media, the immediacy of communication, the way so many people, and let's face it, we do a lot more interacting via social media with friends and strangers, and the immediacy of that communication, that breath, that beat, that for thousands of years in human society that we all would take before we spoke, we don't have to do that anymore. Well, we should, but we don't. And how many fights and friendships and instances of ill will result from it. With that being so prevalent, is there any hope that we can maintain a mannered society?
I'd say there's always hope. I mean, society adjusts, and any society that's going to remain is going to adjust itself and find new standards for itself. But yeah, I think the anonymity leads credence to the argument that violence is one thing that makes you think before you speak sometimes, because if you're on the other side of a computer and there is no way for anyone to find you and there are no possible repercussions, that's where you get internet trolls from. Yeah. I can say what I want, I can do what I want, I can be as offensive as I possibly can be, because you can't do anything about it. You cannot find my mom's basement and come down here and beat my fat little ass. But yes, I think there is always hope for society. Society will adjust, but definitely the age of communication, the internet age, is having an impact on how manners are. Maybe that's a topic for a future show.
Well, all right. On that note, we will do the mannerful thing, and before we wish all of you a good evening, we will kindly ask you that if you enjoy the show, to go to iTunes and leave us a good review, people. Dadgummit, we need the help.
It's only good manners.
Right, there you go. On that note, what do you guys think? Are we just, is it just that we're just that old and crusty and we're, you kids get off my lawn mentality? You folks out there that are parents, how do you instill manners in your children? If you do, how do you define that? Let us know. You know all the social media aspect of our presence here, gang. Facebook.com/unclearthinking. We're there. We're on Google+. You can hit us up our individual Twitters. I'm at LA Smoke, SMOAK. John is at, tell him, John.
Cuhullen, CUHULLEN.
Yeah, that's it. Let us know what you think, folks. We will be back sometimes in the near future with another interesting delving into some deep, murky topic. So until then, hit us up on social media and be back here next time, and we'll see you guys then.
Bye.